I believe in high sensitive power. I think that the natural born skills of the high sensitive people are perfect for building our future. And why I think so, that's what I'm going to explain to you in the next minutes, by taking you with me through some memories of mine and some discoveries I made up till now. I want to start with my first memory. I was about 1, sitting on the floor in the living room, on the carpet. The carpet was a blue curly carpet with green lines in it. And there was a black sky couch. There was a rosewood cupboard. And there was something with the light. The light was a little vibrating, like on a summer's day. And all felt at ease. Nice. A few years later, I was about 4. I was observing everything, actually. I am a curious one, I was it from birth. And I was observing people, and people who talked, and I sensed all kinds of things. So when I saw someone coming, I heard their talking, and I sensed a headache or stomachache, or if someone was joyful or in grief, or very sad, or too busy. And what I saw was that people only reacted to each other on the spoken words. And I thought, And for example, some day there came a friend of my mother's in, and the moment she came in, I felt, ooh, she's in grief. And my mother went to her and she said, Anne, how are you today? And suddenly she smiled and she said, oh, I'm so joyful. And then the talk went on and on about the joyful being, which was not. And it puzzled me, and I tried to ask my mother, how come? Why do you only react on the spoken words? But I was so little, I didn't have the words to ask her. And my mother didn't understand me. And there I was. I didn't understand the world, and the world didn't understand me. And luckily, I had the brains, and they saved me. So I observed, and I found out that things of the head were accepted. The things of the senses were difficult, not handy. There were no words for my senses or all the perceptions I had. So I tried to fit in, like every little kid. And I chose the way of the head. And the part of me, the sensing part of me, became very little hidden inside of me, in my armor, like Paul Simon wrote a song about. In the brain part, I succeeded to fit in. I did my education, and I became a lawyer. I married, I got children, and at the age of 35, I divorced. And then I thought, now I can feel again. And then help came down upon me, because I felt everything. I couldn't read the newspapers. I couldn't look at photographs. I couldn't look at the television. And the worst thing was I couldn't be no longer than 2 hours in a room when there were more than 6 people. But I had to take care of myself and my 4 children. So that wasn't handy. And realizing that I couldn't be most of the day completely overwhelmed by all those perceptions, realizing that I was the only one who was responsible for my life and of my children in the little years, I started a quest, because I had to handle this. And the first thing I found was high sensitivity. And I thought, high sensitivity? Nah. But yes, I filled in the list. Yes, 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 yes. And I thought, oh, yes. What am I going to do with it? And realizing I had those two parts, those two worlds, I tried to handle it by approaching it by the two worlds. So in the world of my brain, I wanted to know everything. I collected all the scientific studies there were, and there were a lot. And so I found out it was not a disorder, it was a trait like having my blonde hair or my blue eyes. And it's just about having a more sensitive central nervous system. And this central nervous system receives more and processes deeper. So it's sooner it's full and sooner in stress. But the deep processing takes care of empathic skills, of thinking out of the box, of being very fast to the core of the problem, being creative in doing or in thinking. And it was found with 50 to 20% of the human beings. And not only the human beings, because they have studied more than 100 species up till now, who have exactly the same percentage. 15 to 20% of a population has a highly sensitive nerve system. And it has a function. It has the function to bring the group as a whole to the future. Because this part of the group senses more and senses deeper, senses sooner. So in the early days, they knew where the water was, when the winter was coming, where the food was, if the food was ripe. And now we can use these skills like creativity, thinking out of the box in our society now. So we can bring our group better to the future. In the part of my sensing, in my sensing part, that was difficult because I hadn't lived there. I sensed all kinds of things, but how did I handle them properly? I hadn't learned it. So I thought, who am I? And what do I do with all these perceptions? And I learned this way, but maybe there's another way, a better way. And so I went on searching, exploring myself. And in fact, I wrote a complete new manual, How to Live with Jaqueline. And in all, it took me 10 years to fully integrate those two worlds. In the meantime, in my professional life, I was one day standing in court defending a party. And I looked at the other party and they were lying to the judge, not a little bit, but tremendously lying. And I was astonished. I thought, oh. And I looked at the judge and the judge believed it. And then I realized I couldn't be a lawyer anymore. So I went on to mediation and then to coaching. And in the coaching, I saw people falling out of their jobs with stress complaints, physical complaints, psychic complaints, burnouts, bore-outs. And a lot of them were high sensitive. I could see it, I could feel it. And when I asked them, have you ever thought of the idea of maybe being high sensitive? They said, nah. But after a week, they said, oh, yes, I think I'm high sensitive. And what do I do now? And then I told them the clues, and they could really fast return to their jobs or find another job that suited better. And they wrote their own manual, because it's very necessary. But it went all right in a short time. And I saw school dropouts. And school dropouts, 16, sometimes younger. I want to tell you a story about that. An example of a 7-year-old girl, she told me a few months ago. She said, we had this, the teacher showed us a big photograph of a butterfly. She said it was beautiful. She said, this large butterfly, and you saw all those hairs and the lids of the paws, and all the shades of the brown in the hairs going to the green, all kinds of shades of green going to blue, and then a little black and white. And the teacher asked, how many colors does this butterfly have? And she said, and I said, thousands. And the teacher said, wrong, it's only 5. And I asked her, what did you say? And she said, I didn't say anything, because the teacher only sees 5. But it happens every day to these children, and by the time they're 16, they've had it with school. They can't learn anymore there. They want to do something else. So, the coaching I did a short time, and then I was complaining about all the high-sensitive people who didn't see themselves, and the world that didn't see them, and that it costs a lot of money, and that people are so unhappy, what wasn't necessary. But complaining doesn't solve the problem. So I started our institute, where we nowadays teach professionals, like therapists or teachers, people who work with people, how to work with the high-sensitive and the gifted people, because it's not yet in educations. And it's necessary to recognize the high sensitivity or the giftedness, because then this group can develop the skills, and then they can develop themselves, so they can use the skills. In the job advertisements nowadays, there is asked for loyal, trustworthy, honest people who can think out of the box, who are creative, and who are empathic, because they need the glue in the organizations. Those are exactly the skills of the high-sensitive people. So the shortest way to use these skills is to use the high-sensitive people, to see them, to let them develop their skills and develop their sense of self. So what I want to ask you is, when you go home, recognize the high-sensitive people, recognize your family, your neighbor, your colleague, your friend, or yourself. And acknowledge it. Acknowledge them, and so they can develop. They can let their gifts grow. And we can use them as a whole to build a perfect, happy future. Thank you.